Picture a house with 40 rooms. Now fill it with silence. Add a ballroom where nobody has danced in 8 months, a wine cellar with gaps on the racks like missing teeth, a French chef who left in October and was never replaced, and a marble staircase so cold in winter that the housemaids call it the glacier. That's a Fifth Avenue mansion in the spring of 1893. The grandest private house on the grandest street in America. A palace built by railroad money. And railroad money, this particular spring, is dying. We're going back there tonight. Not as guests arriving in a carriage, handing our coats to a footman. We're going below stairs, down the servants' staircase, into the basement kitchen, into the attic bedrooms where the ceiling slopes so low you can't stand up straight on one side of the bed. One person, one collapse. Everything she would have seen, smelled, heard, and survived. So I make these history stories, and honestly, I have no idea if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just lying there in the dark, wide awake, wanting to hear about a 19-year-old girl polishing silver that's about to be sold at auction. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The doorbell rings, and you are told to lie. Not asked. Told. Mr. Greaves, the butler, stops you at the foot of the back stairs with a hand that doesn't quite touch your shoulder. Butlers never quite touch you. And says, in a voice pitched so low the walls can't hear it, "If that is Mr. Aldous from the coal company, Madam is not at home. She's not at home to anyone. Do you understand?" You understand. Madam is at home. Madam's upstairs in the morning room right now. You carried her tea tray up there 40 minutes ago, and you heard her crying through the door, a small, careful, muffled crying. The crying of a woman who has trained herself her whole life not to be heard. But the coal man cannot know that. Nobody can know that. So you smooth your apron with hands that smell of beeswax and lemon oil. You climb the back stairs. You cross the black and white marble of the entrance hall, your heels clicking too loud, always too loud in this hall. And you open the great oak door to a man in a brown suit holding a folded paper. "Delia," he says. He knows your name. That's the worst part. Mr. Aldous has been delivering coal to this house since before you arrived, since before you left Ireland, probably since before you were born. 11 tons of anthracite every winter month. This house eats coal the way other houses eat bread. 22 fireplaces, a furnace in the basement the size of a small ship's boiler. "I'm sorry, Mr. Aldous. Madame is not at home." He looks at you. You look at a spot just past his left ear, at the traffic on Fifth Avenue, the carriages rolling by in the March cold, the horses steaming. "Delia," he says again, quieter. "It's $412. It's been 4 months. I've got my own men to pay." $412. You make $18 a month. You do the arithmetic before you can stop yourself. You always do the arithmetic. It's a disease you caught the day you started counting your wages in steamship tickets. And $412 is almost 2 years of your life. Ode to the coal man, by a family whose name is carved into the front of a bank on Broadway. "Madam is not at home," you say, and you close the door. The click of the latch sounds like something ending. Now. Before we go any further, I need you to understand where you are, because this house is going to be your whole world tonight, and you should know what a Gilded Age mansion actually was. Not the postcard, the machine. This is a house on Fifth Avenue in the 50s, built in 1881, in the style people call French chateau. Limestone turrets, a slate roof, iron cresting along the ridgeline like the spine of some sleeping animal. 60 feet of frontage on the most expensive dirt in the Western Hemisphere. The family who built it made their money in Western railroads, the kind of money that arrives in waves, in torrents, money that seems less like wealth and more like weather. And you, Bridget Cordelia Farrell, called Delia because there were already 2 Bridgets on the staff when you arrived, you are the second housemaid. You are 19 years old. You came from County Galway 3 years ago with a tin trunk, 1 good shawl, a letter from a priest, and $11 sewn into your hem. Your passage cost your family a season's pig. Back home, everyone said America would swallow you whole. They weren't wrong. They just didn't know it would do it so politely. Second housemaid means you are the second of 3, below Annie and above little Kate, and it means your life is fires, floors, and brass. You wake at 5:30. You clean and light as many as 14 fireplaces before the family opens its eyes. You haul coal scuttles that weigh 30 pounds up 4 flights of stairs. Not the marble stairs, never the marble stairs, the back stairs, the narrow wooden ones behind the walls, because the whole point of a house like this is that the work must never be seen. The family should wake to warm rooms and clean grates and never once wonder how it happened. You are the how, and the how must be invisible. That's the first rule you learned in this house, before you learned where the linen closet was, before you learned Madam takes her tea week with no sugar. If a member of the family comes down a corridor, you turn and face the wall. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not exist unless needed. There is a girl in this house, you, who has scrubbed the same staircase every morning for 3 years, and the master of the house does not know your face. You used to mind that. You don't anymore. Invisible girls hear everything, and what you have been hearing these last 8 months through walls and doors and the strange hollow pipes of this enormous house is the sound of a fortune coming apart. It started with the newspapers. You don't read the financial pages. You read the servants' column and the shipping news looking for boats from Queenstown. But Mr. Greaves reads everything, standing at the long deal table in the servants' hall with the paper spread flat. And one morning last summer you watched his face change while he read, watched it go still the way a pond goes still before ice. And he folded the paper very carefully, in half and in half again, and put it in the fire. That was the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad. It went bankrupt in February. Then the money markets tightened like a fist, and the gold started leaving the country, and out west the railroads the master had built his fortune on, bought into, borrowed against again, began to shake. You didn't understand any of it then. You understand it now the way servants always end up understanding, which is not through explanations but through evidence. Through the tradesmen's bills that stopped being paid, through the chef, Monsieur Albert, who packed his knives in October and left for the Astors without a word of goodbye to anyone below the rank of housekeeper, through the second footman dismissed at Christmas, through the under-coachman gone in January, and 1 pair of carriage horses sold in February, the bays, the beautiful bays, led out of the mews on a grey morning while Feeney, the coachman, stood with his back turned because he couldn't watch. Through the crying behind the morning-room door, you stand now in the entrance hall with your hand still on the cold brass of the latch, and you can feel the house around you, all 40 rooms of it, and for the first time it feels less like a palace and more like a ship. A great liner, lit and gilded, taking on water somewhere below the line where the passengers can see. And here is the thing nobody upstairs has said out loud, the thing that sits in your chest like a swallowed stone. When a ship like this goes down, The family gets the lifeboats. The servants swim. Back downstairs. Quickly now, before Mrs. Croft catches you standing idle in the hall like a statue of yourself. Down the back stairs, 26 steps. You could walk them blind. You have walked them blind. At 5:30 on winter mornings with a candle in one hand and a housemaid's box in the other. And into the basement, into the kitchen, into the warm yellow world below the street. Because that's the other thing about these houses. There are two houses. There is the house above, which is silence and marble and the smell of hothouse lilies. And there is the house below, which is heat and noise and the smell of everything at once. Bread proving, copper polish, wet wool, onions, scouring sand, the sharp coal gas breath of the range. The range never goes out. It is 12 feet of black iron along the kitchen wall, and Mrs. Halloran, the cook, feeds it and rakes it and curses it like a marriage. "Well?" she says, not looking up from a pastry. Her forearms are white to the elbow with flour. She has burn scars on both wrists, layered, old over new, the way every cook in New York has, because a range like that reaches out and touches you sooner or later, and she calls them her wedding bands. The coal man, you say, and you told him what you were told to tell him. I did. Mrs. Halloran turns her rolling pin, and the pastry turns under it, and she says nothing for a moment, and the silence has a shape to it. Then, 4 months of coal. Mother of God! I've got a fishman won't come no more. I've got a butcher sends his boy to the door asking questions. I'm cooking for a dinner party Thursday, 12 covers, and I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul in me own larder to do it. A dinner party? Yes. That's the maddest part, the part your mother back in Galway would never believe. The money is dying and the parties go on. Because on Fifth Avenue the appearance of money is the money. The moment this family stops entertaining, stops dressing, stops rolling out in the carriage at the fashionable hour, that is the moment the whispers become fact. The creditors descend all at once, and the whole thing comes down in a week instead of a year. So Madame wears her diamonds to the opera while the coal man stands unpaid on the step. It isn't vanity, it's a tourniquet. You take your dinner at midday in the servants' hall, the way you always do, at the long table with its strict invisible seating chart. Mr. Greaves at the head, Mrs. Croft the housekeeper at the foot, Mrs. Halloran, then the lady's maid, then Feeny, then Annie, then you, then Kate, then the scullery maid Mag at the very end nearest the door. Because someone has to be lowest, even down here, especially down here. You eat boiled mutton and potatoes and you eat quickly, because you have 30 minutes and 11 grates upstairs still holding this morning's ash. It's Annie who says it. Annie, first housemaid, 26, 6 years in this house, who has a young man who drives a grocery wagon and a plan to be married by autumn. She says it with her eyes on her plate. Delaney's let their whole staff go Tuesday. All of them. The whole house. Gave the maids a week's wages and a character and had them out by Saturday. Nobody answers. Mr. Greaves cuts his mutton. The clock on the wall. Servants' hall clocks are always 5 minutes fast, always in every house, to keep you running ahead of the bells. Ticks its crooked time. A week's wages, Annie says again, softer. 6 years some of those girls were there. That will do, says Mrs. Croft. And it does. It has to. But you look around the table at these 9 faces, and you understand that every single person here is doing the same arithmetic you did on the doorstep. Kate sends $4 a month to her mother in Limerick. Mag has nothing and no one. This table is her family. Feeny is 51 years old, and a 51-year-old coachman in a city that is starting to whisper about electric carriages is a man standing on melting ice. Mr. Greaves has been in service since he was 14. 40 years of other people's houses, and everything he is fits into one word, butler. And that word only means something if there's a door worth answering. $18 a month you make. Room and board found. Your wages are 2 months in arrears. You haven't told anyone that last part. Neither has anyone else. But you know, the way you know everything in this house, that you are all owed, every one of you, and that nobody has asked for the money because asking would mean saying the thing out loud, and saying it out loud might make it true. The bellboard on the wall gives its dry rattle. A little brass disc trembles behind glass. Morning room, madam. You wipe your mouth, stand, straighten your cap, and go up to be invisible. While you climb those stairs, let me tell you how a Galway girl ends up carrying tea trays in a chateau, because the road that brought Delia here is the road that brought 250,000 girls like her, and it deserves the telling. She crossed in steerage in the spring of 1890, 11 days out of Queenstown, in a berth 2 feet from the ceiling in a compartment of 90 women, and what she remembers of the ocean is not the ocean. It is the smell, bilge, vomit, carbolic, and boiled beef, layered like the smells of this house would later be layered, and the sound of 90 women praying in 3 languages through a 2-day gale, and the girl from Cork in the next berth who taught her, by lantern light, the American words elevator, streetcar, icebox, testing them in her mouth like coins. Then the harbour, and the immigration men at the barge office chalking letters on coats, and her aunt's face in the waiting crowd. Her mother's sister, 12 years in New York, a cook in Brooklyn, built out of the same bones as her mother but somehow twice the size, as if America had inflated her. And the first meal on American soil, which was beefsteak, an entire beefsteak, for an ordinary Tuesday dinner, and Delia ate it and cried, and her aunt watched her cry over the meat and said, not unkindly, "Aye, that's the first lesson. There's food here. Now here's the second. You'll work like a horse for it." Her aunt gave her 3 weeks and a course of instruction sharper than any convent's. How to answer an advertisement, how to stand in an agency parlour, the intelligence offices they're called, rooms on 6th Avenue where girls sit on benches along one wall like goods on a shelf, and housekeepers walk the row asking ages and parishes and looking at hands. "Show them your hands," her aunt said. "Your hands are your letters of reference until you have letters of reference. And above all, get into a good house. Not a rich house, a good house. A house where the servants eat what the family eats more or less. A house that pays the doctor when a girl scalds herself. You'll know a good house by the faces of the maids leaving on Sunday. If they walk out laughing, take the place at any wage. If they walk out silent, refuse it at any wage." Delia sat on the agency bench 4 times. The 4th time, a tall woman in grey walked the row, stopped in front of her, asked her age, her church, whether she could do fires and floors, and then said, "Hands." Delia held them out. The woman turned them over once, like a farmer at a fair, read the country childhood in them, the milking, the turf, the potato drills, and said, "You'll do. Second housemaid, $18, first Sunday afternoon and alternate evenings. The house is on 5th Avenue. That was Mrs. Croft. That was the whole interview. Servants are hired the way horses are bought, and the ones who mind that too much don't last, and the ones who last learn to take a bitter pride in it. Sound, willing, good feet, kind eye. You'll do. What her aunt could not teach her, the house taught her in her first month, mostly through Annie, sometimes through tears. that there is a hierarchy below stairs more rigid than anything above, and your place in it governs where you sit when you speak and who you may speak to. That the lady's maid and the butler and the cook are the aristocracy, called the upper servants, and in the grandest houses they take their pudding apart from the rest in the housekeeper's room, like dons at a high table. That you never ever touch the front doorbell, that you sort the post but do not read the postcards, or at least are not caught reading the postcards. That madam's discarded gowns pass to the lady's maid by ancient right, who sells them to a dealer on Division Street, and that this traffic in the clothes of the rich is a recognised industry, with its own shops, so that on any given Sunday half the finery in Central Park was somebody's employer's the year before, and she learned the numbers of her new country, the arithmetic that governed everything, that a factory girl made $5 a week and paid 3 of it for a bed and board in a crowded room, and was free every evening and hungry most of them, that a housemaid made her 18 a month and not a penny of it went to rent or food or coal or doctor, so that a careful girl in service could bank more actual silver than a shop girl earning nominally twice as much, and that this was the deal, the whole deal, weighed and signed. You sold your evenings, your privacy, your name. Half the mistresses in New York would have called her Mary regardless. Madam, to her credit, never did. Your right to a follower, a young man, without permission granted, your right to be visible in your own life, and in exchange, the attic bed, the full plate, the doctor, the wages banked, and $4 a month moving west to east across the Atlantic in a money order, turning into shoes and tea and a slate roof for the cottage in Galway. Was it a good bargain? You'll hear it argued both ways for 100 years after this night. The factory girls looked down on the servant girls. Bridget's, the comic papers called them, drew them with jaw and brogue, pitied them their bells and their locked evenings. The servant girls looked downright back, pitied the factory girls, their lofts and their landlords and their 5-flight walk-ups, that nobody's money would ever pay a doctor in. What Delia herself would tell you, if you asked her on the attic stairs with her candle, it was the bargain there was. You take the bargain there is, and you keep your side of it shining, and you bank against the day the other side fails. She had been banking 3 years. $51 in the post office savings bank on 8th Avenue, a book with her name printed in it, Bridget C. Farrell, The C. Her own flourish. Nobody in Galway ever used the Cordelia. And that blue bank book, more than the crucifix, more than the letters, was the true talisman in the tin trunk. $51 was 2 months of falling without hitting anything. In the winter that was coming, whole families would fall from further with less. Now, up the last of the stairs, cap straight, knock, and in. Madam by the window, the light on her careful face, and the fire to see to, and the porcelain question waiting. You know the road that brought you here. Kneel and see to the fire. The morning room faces east over the side street and gets the early light, which is why Madam likes it. And the light this afternoon is thin and grey and shows the dust you missed on the picture rail, and you see it the instant you enter, and pray she doesn't. Madam is 44 years old. She was a beauty once. There's a Sargent portrait of her in the drawing room, painted in Paris in 1884, all pearl grey satin and a throat like a swan. And she's still handsome in the way of expensive things kept carefully. But these last months something has gone out of her face. Not the composure, never the composure, something underneath it. She looks like the portrait of the portrait. Delia, she knows your name. Madam always has, it's the master who doesn't. The fire, please, and then I want you to take the blue Sèvres from the cabinet in the small drawing room and carry it up to my dressing room. Carefully, wrap each piece. Yes, ma'am. Use the flannel from the plate cupboard, not newspaper, flannel. Yes, ma'am. You kneel at the grate. This is the work your body knows so well it does itself. The brush, the black lead, the little flames coaxed up through kindling that spits because it's cheap wood now. All the wood is cheap now. Your hands move and your mind is free, and your mind is asking one question, over and over, in your mother's voice. Why is she moving the porcelain? You find out at 6 o'clock, and it takes you 3 trips up the back stairs with your arms full of flannel-wrapped china worth more than your village. And it's Annie who tells you on the landing, mouth close to your ear, both of you holding a king's ransom in Sèvres against your aprons like babies. She's hiding it from the appraisers. The what? There were men here Monday while you were doing the silver, from the auction house, walking the rooms with little notebooks. Mr. Greaves showed them round himself and looked like he was walking behind a coffin. Annie shifts her grip on the porcelain. Below you both, 4 floors down, you can hear Mag scouring pots, the long rhythmic scrape of it rising up the stairwell like the sound of the house breathing. It's the house, Delia. They're valuing the house, and what's in it. The house. You stand very still on the landing. Under your fingers, through the flannel, you can feel the cold curved perfection of the porcelain, and you have a sudden, terrible, complete understanding, the kind that arrives all at once like ice water down the back of your dress. Everything you touch in this house every day. The silver you rub until your fingers crack and blacken, the mahogany you feed with wax, the marble you wash on your knees with soda till your knuckles split, the 206 pieces of the good dinner service you've washed and dried and counted and never, not once, chipped. All of it is about to belong to strangers. You have spent 3 years of your one life keeping these things perfect for an auction catalogue. And here's what I need you to understand about that feeling, because it's the feeling this whole night turns on. Delia does not love this family. Let's be honest about that. They are not cruel. She has heard about cruel houses. Houses where the mistress runs a white glove along the ledgers and docks wages for dust. Houses where maids are dismissed for being seen, actually dismissed for the crime of being visible in a corridor. And this house is not that. This house is merely indifferent, which is what kindness looks like from very far above. No, what Delia loves, in the strange shamefaced way you can't confess to anyone, is the work, the shine on the silver, the whiteness of the linen, the deep wet gleam of a mahogany table that she has waxed once a week for 150 weeks. Nobody sees her, but everybody sees that. It is the only signature she's allowed to leave on the world, and they are going to sell her signature to pay the coal man. That night in the attic you can't sleep. The attic rooms are strange weather, freezing in winter, stifling in summer, and in March they are both at once. Cold air pooling on the floor while the chimney breast behind the wall breathes warmth against your back. You share the room with Kate. Iron bedsteads, a washstand, a strip of drugget on bare boards, a window the size of a Bible looking out over the rooftops. Kate is asleep, or pretending, her rosary wound round her fist the way she's held it every night since she got here. You lie there and listen to the house. Every big house has a night voice. This one ticks and settles, its timbers easing, its pipes knocking somewhere deep like a heart with a murmur. Steam heat sighing, a shutter straining on its hook when the wind comes off the park. 3 years, and you know every sound the way a sailor knows her ship. And tonight, underneath all of it, very faint from somewhere far below, the library. It must be the library. You can hear the master pacing back and forth, back and forth. 40 rooms, and the richest man you will ever stand invisible in front of is walking a hole in his carpet at 2 a.m, and 4 floors up, a housemaid who is owed $36 is lying awake listening to him do it. The panic breaks properly in May. You will remember exactly where you were, the way people remember wars. You were on the front steps with a bucket and a stone, scouring, because the steps of a Fifth Avenue house are scoured every single morning, whether the world is ending or not, and the newsboys came up the avenue running, not walking their route, running, the way they only run for death and disaster, and screaming the same word over and over until it stopped sounding like a word. Panic, panic, panic. The National Cordage Company had failed. Then it was banks. Through May and June, the newspapers read like casualty lists. Banks in Chicago, banks in Omaha, banks going down in Kansas and Colorado and California, hundreds of them by summer's end, and the railroads falling like trees in a storm, the Erie in July, the Northern Pacific in August, the Union Pacific in October, the Santa Fe before the year was out. A quarter of the railroads in America would end that year in the hands of receivers. 15,000 businesses gone. In the cities, by winter, 1 man in 5 would have no work at all. But you don't know those numbers yet, kneeling on the steps in the May morning with the scouring stone going still in your hand. You only know the sound. The newsboys shrieking, and then within the hour something you've never heard on Fifth Avenue in 3 years, hurrying, men in silk hats running, actually running, downtown, hats held on with one hand, coattails flying, and carriages whipping past at a canter, and every one of those men running toward the same few marble buildings on the same few downtown streets to stand in line and beg for their own money. You kneel there with your wet stone and your cracked hands, and you watch the richest street in the world learn what fear feels like, and God forgive you for one hot black second. Something in you that you will never admit to the priest says, now you know. Now the whole shining lot of you know how the rest of us wake up feeling every morning of our lives. Then you think of Kate's mother in Limerick waiting on her $4, and the second passes. You pick up the stone, you finish the steps. They have to be white, even today, especially today. Before the summer, before the worst of it, there is one more dinner party, and you need to live through it with her, because nothing shows you what this world was like the way a Gilded Age dinner does. From underneath. 12 covers. Thursday. Mrs. Halloran has been at war since Tuesday morning. Stock simmering overnight, the range fed like a furnace on a liner, the kitchen at 90 degrees while sleet ticks on the area windows. There will be 8 courses, because there must be 8 courses, because a family fighting rumours of ruin must set a table that says the rumours are lies. Oysters, a clear soup that took a day and a half, fish, an entree, a roast, a sorbet to rest the stomach, game, sweets and ices and fruit. That costs in March more per pound than beef, hothouse grapes, forced strawberries, a pineapple that Mrs. Halloran carries to the larder with 2 hands and a face like a woman carrying the rent. Your part begins at 5, the dining room, the cloth first, white damask, ironed on the table itself so it lies like poured milk, and you and Annie work the creases out with your palms, and the linen is cold and heavy and smells of the pressing room, of hot metal and lavender. Then the plate. The good silver comes up from the safe in the butler's pantry in its baize bags, and Mr. Greaves counts it out and you lay it. 3 forks, 3 knives, spoons, the little oyster forks like jewellery, each piece rubbed with a chamois as it goes down, your breath fogging the bowls of the spoons and wiped away, wiped away. A full service for 12 is over 200 pieces on the cloth. You know, because you count them. You always count them. Counting is half a servant's religion. Glasses. 5 at each place, sherry to champagne, held up one by one to the gas and turned, looking for the smear, the water spot, the flaw that Madam's eye would find like a hawk finds a mouse. The centrepiece comes from the florist at 6. Smilax and roses, out of season, on ice from somewhere, money folded into the shape of flowers, candles. The gas turned low because candlelight is kinder to jewels and older faces, and at 7:30 the carriages begin, and you're stationed in the hall to take the ladies' wraps, and the cold comes in off their furs along with their perfume, and not one of them looks at you, and their diamonds throw little coins of light across the marble as they pass, and you stand holding 40 pounds of sable in your aching arms, and you think about the coal man. Dinner itself you see in slices, through the pantry hatch, carrying, fetching, the table laughing, the master telling a story at the head, his colour high, his hand steady tonight, performing solvency the way an actor performs a king. And it works. That's the thing you can't get over. These are bankers' wives and railroad men and one senator. People who read the same newspapers Mr. Greaves reads. People who must know, and the pineapple comes in on its silver stand, and the table makes the small admiring noise that pineapples exist to produce. And for 4 hours in a lit room, the family is not ruined. Because ruin, on Fifth Avenue, is not a number in a ledger. It is a verdict of the room. And tonight, the room acquits. At 1 in the morning you are still washing glasses in the pantry. 70 glasses, in soda water gone grey and cool, your fingertips white and pruned, and the cut on your left thumb reopened and stinging. And through the wall you can hear Mrs. Halloran, 59 years old and 18 hours on her feet, singing very quietly to herself in Irish while she scours the fish kettle. The song is one your grandmother sang. You never learn what it's called. Some things below stairs don't have names. They just get handed on like the ache in the hands. The young master comes home in June. He's 25, the only son, and he's been in Paris for 2 years doing whatever it is that sons do in Paris while their fathers' railroads die. And he comes home because the cables finally frightened even him. You carry his cans of hot water up on his first morning. The son's rooms have no bath laid on. The house was built 1 bathroom too early. And he is at the window in his shirt sleeves looking down at the avenue, and he says without turning around, "It's true then, the shut rooms. I counted the dead windows from the street. You are not supposed to be spoken to. You are certainly not supposed to answer." You set the cans down by the washstand, the copper handles biting their familiar line into your fingers, and you say, "Yes, sir." How bad below stairs? Truthfully. And maybe it's the 2 years of Paris in him, or maybe fear makes some people human, but he turns around and looks at you, a thing his father has never once done, and waits for the truth like a person who wants it. 2 footmen gone and the chef, sir. Wages in arrears since September. The tradesmen come to the door. He takes this the way a man takes cold water, a flinch, then stillness. And you stay. Some of us. Yes, sir. Why? You think about it. You actually think about it, standing there in your print dress with your scalded hands folded, while a young man who has never carried anything heavier than a hat waits for your answer. Because the work doesn't know the money's gone, sir. The fires still want laying. He looks at you for a long moment and then he laughs. One short, broken syllable, not at you, at everything, and says, "My God, if my father had understood that about railroads we'd all be fine." And then, quietly as you reach the door, "Thank you. Nobody in this house says anything true above the first floor. He's gone again by August back to Paris, where it is cheaper to be him. But twice more before he goes he asks you things. What the servants eat, what Mag is paid, whether Feeney has family, writing none of it down, just listening, with the guilty, hungry attention of a man discovering at 25 that his whole gilded life has been carried up the back stairs on other people's forearms. You don't know what he does with it. Probably nothing. Paris is a long way, and guilt travels badly. But you'll remember being asked. Being asked is so rare in this life that it files itself away like money. The summer of 1893 is the strangest season of your life, and it is strange because of a single fact you can't get your mind around. Out in the country, in Chicago, there is a World's Fair. The White City. 27 million people will walk through it before it closes. This in a nation of 65 million. And the newspapers Mr. Greaves no longer burns are split down the middle, half wonder, half ruin. Electric light by the acre on one page, breadlines on the next. A country showing the world its dazzling future with one hand, while the other hand goes through its own pockets finding nothing. Fifth Avenue in July empties the way it always does. The families go to Newport, to the mountains, to Europe. Except this year some houses don't empty, because Newport costs money, and some houses empty differently, quietly, permanently, with straw and packing cases going in the front door and furniture coming out, and everyone on both sides of the wall pretending not to see. Your family stays. The master says town suits his affairs. What he means is that a man fighting for his financial life cannot be 3 hours away from his brokers, and everyone knows it, and no one says it. Madame gives out that she prefers the city this year. The paper's society columns note with the delicacy of a knife going in that the family is not entertaining this season. Below stairs the machine grinds on with pieces missing. There is no chef, so Mrs. Halloran cooks for upstairs and down alike, and her wedding bands multiply. There is one footman where there were 3, a boy named Thomas with beautiful calves and terrified eyes, and when he gives notice in August, he has a cousin who can get him onto a family in Boston, a safe family, banking money, old money. Mr. Greaves does not even try to talk him out of it. Just shakes his hand at the area door and says, "You're a sensible lad," in a voice like a door closing. So now, some evenings, when there are callers, it is you who carries in the tray. Understand what that means. A parlour maid where a footman should be is, on Fifth Avenue, a public confession. Footmen are the most useless servants in a great house, and therefore the most important. A big man in livery doing almost nothing is money made flesh, money standing by the door breathing. Replace him with a housemaid at 1/5 of the cost, and every caller who takes a teacup from your tray reads the whole story in your apron. Madam knows this. You watch her decide every single time the bell rings that a maid at the door is better than no door at all, and the callers still come. Fewer. Different. There is a species of caller you have learned to identify by August, the way a farmer learns to spot crows, gentlemen who arrive alone in the afternoons with leather cases, lawyers, men from the banks, aunts, a man you recognize with a jolt from an engraving in the paper, one of the great names, one of the men who own everything the master's men only run, and he stays 40 minutes in the library, and when you bring the whiskey tray you see the master's hand shake against the decanter. A fine, small tremor he stills by gripping the arm of his chair, and the great man watches him do it the way a hawk watches a field. That evening the master doesn't dress for dinner. First time in 3 years. He eats alone in the library off a tray, your tray, cold chicken and a whole bottle, and when you come back for the tray at 11 he is asleep in his chair with his mouth open, looking, for the first time since you've been in this house, like an ordinary man, like somebody's father asleep after a fair day. You stand there in the lamplight holding the tray, and you are the only person in the world seeing him like this, and the strangeness of it presses on your chest, that the invisible girl is the one who gets to see the truth. You put more coal on his fire, quietly. It isn't your job. It isn't kindness either, quite. You don't have a word for what it is. In September, the wages stop pretending. Mrs. Croft calls the staff into the servants' hall on a Sunday evening. All 9 of you. 8 now. 7. You have to keep recounting. And stands at the foot of the table with her hands folded and delivers it like scripture. Wages will be paid when circumstances allow. The family asks for the staff's patience and loyalty in a difficult period. Anyone who wishes to seek another situation will receive an excellent character. An excellent character. That's the coin they still have. A character, a reference, is life and death to a servant. Without one you cannot be hired into any decent house. You fall through service into the streets, into the laundries, into worse. And a character can be withheld. Nobody says that part. Nobody has to. Patience and loyalty. That night the servants' hall holds a parliament. The door shut, the voices low, Mag posted on the stairs to cough if anyone comes. Annie is leaving. Her grocery wagon young man has been made assistant manager of the store, glory be, and they'll marry at Christmas instead of autumn. And her voice shakes saying it because leaving feels like desertion, and staying feels like drowning. Feeny will stay. Who's hiring a coachman this winter? I'll stop while there's horses to stop for. Kate cries without sound, the way she does everything. And Mr. Greaves stands, and everyone quiets, because in 40 years of service he has earned the one privilege service gives. When he speaks, the room listens. I have been through this before, he says, in London in the 70s, in a house I will not name. I will tell you the order in which it happens, so that none of you can say you were not warned. First the tradesmen go unpaid, then the staff, then the horses are sold, then the pictures, then the plate, then there is an auction, then there is a smaller house or a hotel or a steamer to Europe where living is cheap and nobody knows the difference. That is the order. We are past the horses. He looks down the table at each face, and his own face is perfectly still. I am owed $190. I shall very likely never see it. I am staying regardless, and I will tell you why, and it is not loyalty. It is that a house dies like a body dies, and somebody must lay it out properly. I have kept this house for 12 years. I will keep it to the door. Those of you with somewhere better to be, go, and go with my blessing and the best character I can write. Those of you who stay, and hear something moves behind the stillness, some old buried thing, you will at least be able to say you saw it through. That is worth nothing at the bank. It is not nothing. Silence. The crooked clock ticking its 5 stolen minutes. Then Mrs. Halloran, from her end of the table, dry as a biscuit. Well, I'm too fat to run and too old to learn typewriting. I suppose the range and I will go down together. And the room laughs. A real laugh. Helpless. The laugh of people on a sinking ship discovering they still can. And Mag laughs on the stairs where she's supposed to be keeping watch, and gets scolded, and laughs harder, and that is the night you decide to stay. Not for the family. You want to be clear with yourself about that, lying in the dark later, Kate's rosary clicking faintly across the room. Not for them. For the table. For the 8 faces around the deal table. Because this, the hall, the range, the crooked clock, the seating order older than any of you, this is the only family you have on this side of the ocean. And family, your mother always said, is who's still in the kitchen when the food runs out. You get 1 afternoon off a week, Sunday, after the upstairs luncheon is cleared, and every other Sunday evening, and I want to spend one of those Sundays with you, an October one. Because a servant's day off in 1893 is its own small country, and almost nobody ever wrote it down. It begins with getting dressed as yourself. That's the first strange pleasure of it. The grey wool skirt, the good shirt waist, the hat. You own 1 hat, straw, retrimmed twice, this year with a blue ribbon off a remnant table on 6th Avenue. And when you pin it on in the speckled attic mirror, a person appears who is not the second housemaid. She has your face. You nod at each other. Out the area door. Servants use the area door even on their own time. The front door isn't a door to you, it's a task. And up the steps into the avenue, into the enormous, ownerless light of a free afternoon. The city on Sunday smells different. Less coal, more river. Church bells hang over everything, dozens of them. Catholic and Protestant arguing politely across the rooftops. Mass first at the cathedral on 50th Street. St. Patrick's, white marble, twin spires 330 feet high. Finished within your own lifetime and paid for, they say, nickel by nickel, by the maids and labourers and coachmen of this city, which means it is the one building on this avenue that belongs to your kind, and everyone inside it knows that without saying it. The 11 o'clock is the servants' show, whole pews of housemaids in their retrimmed hats, coachmen scrubbed pink, cooks with their scarred wrists folded in their laps, the incense, the cold stone, the Latin going up into the vaults. Kate cries at the Agnus Dei every single week, and every single week pretends she didn't. Then the afternoon is yours, and here is what a girl with 50 free cents does with New York. Sometimes it's the park. Central Park on a fine Sunday is the whole world let out of school. Nursemaids with prams, clerks with sweethearts, German bands, the carriage parade going round after 3 o'clock, and you and Kate sit on a bench and watch the carriages the way other people read novels judging the horses. Feeney has ruined you. You know a badly matched pair at 100 yards. Judging the liveries, once seeing a face you dusted in a portrait frame go by in an open landau close enough to touch. Sometimes it's 6th Avenue under the L, where the department stores stand shoulder to shoulder. The great glass palaces where a shop girl will show you yard goods with perfect courtesy, because your 50 cents is silver like anyone's, and where you and Annie used to play the game called Furnishing the House, choosing aisle by aisle, the parlour set, the china, the curtains, for the imaginary rooms of your imaginary futures. The L thunders overhead every few minutes, showering cinders, shaking the show windows in their frames. It costs a nickel to ride and rattles along at the second-story level of the whole city, so close to the tenement windows on the East Side lines that you can see into other people's kitchens. Hundreds of kitchens flashing past, each one with its stove and its washing line and its woman working, and that is the truest picture of New York anyone ever painted. A wall of lit boxes, and in every box, hands. And every fourth Sunday, wages or no wages, you go to Mott Street, downtown, where a woman from Spiddle keeps a boarding house, and for 15 cents there is tea and soda bread, and the accents of home, and news gets traded like currency. Who's landed, who's married, who's gone out to Chicago, whose sister needs a place. This is the Irish Telegraph, and it works faster than Western Union. It is how you learned, within 9 days of it happening, that the Delaney's dismissed maids had all found situations except one, and it is where, this October Sunday, a sharp-eyed cook from Mayo takes your measure over the teapot and says the sentence every servant girl in New York heard that autumn. You'd want to be looking now, while there's still houses hiring. When the spring comes, half this city's help will be walking the agencies together. She is right. You know she is right. The wise thing, the Mayo cook thing, is to jump before the deck goes under. You ride the L home in the blue evening, standing in the swaying car with the lit kitchens flashing past below, and you argue with yourself the whole way, wages against loyalty, cents against the table, and by 53rd Street cents has clearly won the argument. And then you walk down the area steps, and the kitchen door opens, and it's warm and yellow inside and smells of Sunday supper. And Mrs. Halloran is scolding Mag for something with great tenderness, and Feeney is reading out the racing results as if he had money on them, and Mr. Greaves is at the head of the table with his collar loosened one notch, which is his version of riot, and Sense loses. Sense goes down without landing a blow. Home is not a wise thing. It never was. You hang your one hat on its nail. Monday morning, 5:30, the bell in your bones, 26 steps down in the dark. And Monday is wash day, so let me give you wash day too, because no account of this life is honest without it. The laundry of a great house is a separate kingdom in the sub-basement. The boiler, the coppers, the mangle like an instrument of the Inquisition, the drying room with its rows of racks that crank up to the ceiling. There used to be 2 laundresses. There is now 1, plus you, plus Kate, plus Mag. Because the house may be dying, but the linen doesn't know it. Sheets first, boiled, and the steam fills the room until the walls run, and your hair plasters to your forehead, and your hands go in and out of water that's either scalding or freezing, never anything between. Lye soap eats the cracks in your knuckles, and you hiss and keep wringing. A wet linen sheet weighs as much as a small child and fights like one. You wring in pairs, you and Kate, twisting against each other like 2 girls winding an enormous white rope, shoulders burning, and the water sheets down and slaps the stone floor. Then the mangle, feeding the corners through straight, minding your fingers, always minding your fingers. Every laundress you've ever met is missing some part of one. And the rollers groan, and the pressed linen comes through, flattened and dense and smelling of clean. That particular smell, hot wet cotton, which is the smell of your Mondays for 4 years and will make you feel tired for the rest of your life every time you meet it. 11 hours, wash day. At the end of it, your hands won't fully close. You eat your supper holding the fork like a shovel, and Mrs. Halloran, who has seen 50 years of Mondays, puts an extra potato on your plate without a word. 200 pairs of sheets, the auction catalogue will say next spring, fine quality, comprising. Autumn now. Let me show you a single day, because the collapse is not made of events. It is made of days, and the days are made of hands. 5:30. The alarm inside you rings before any clock does. 3 years have built a bell into your bones. The attic is black and cold enough that your breath shows in the candlelight. Water in the jug has a skin of ice on it by November. You crack it with 2 fingers and wash your face and neck in water so cold it feels like being slapped by someone who loves you. Corset laced by feel. Print dress, the blue one, worn soft as a hymn book. Thick stockings, boots, apron, cap. Kate moving in the dark across the room, both of you dressing in silence, 4 hands doing 40 buttons without one fumble. Down 26 steps with your candle and your box, the housemaid's box, brushes, black lead, emery paper, cloths, a tinder box. All of it may be £12, carried in the crook of your left arm so your right stays free for the banister, for doors, for catching yourself. Your left forearm has a permanent ridge of muscle from that box, a smooth, hard cable under the skin. Servant girls recognise each other on their Sundays out by their forearms, the way soldiers know soldiers. Fires first, always fires first. But here is what's changed. It used to be 14 fires. Now it is 5. The morning room, the library, the master's bedroom, Madam's bedroom, the dining room. The rest of the house is shut, and this is what a fortune dying actually looks like. Not a crash, not a headline, but doors closing one by one, Holland dust sheets going over the furniture room by room, chandeliers bagged in muslin like heads in hoods, shutters barred until the family is living in 5 rooms of a 40-room house, and the other 35 stand behind their doors in the dark, furniture ghostly under white sheets. Clocks stopped because there's no one spare to wind them. You clean the grates on your knees. There is a way to do it that leaves no mark on the world. The cloth spread first, the ashes lifted with a soft brush so they don't fly, the cinders sifted. Cinders are burned again now. A year ago they went in the bin. The grate black-leaded and rubbed to a dull shine with a brush whose handle is worn to the exact shape of your grip. Black lead gets into the cracks of your hands and stays. Your hands, at 19, are 40 years old. Split at the knuckles in winter, the splits opening and reopening, and you rub them at night with mutton fat begged from Mrs. Halloran. And Kate rubs hers, and you sit on your beds in the candlelight, greasing your cracked hands like 2 old fishwives, 19 and 17. Then the carpets, on your knees again, with damp tea leaves scattered to hold the dust and a stiff brush, working backward, row by row, 40 minutes for the library alone. Then the stairs. Then breakfast. Yours. Bread, dripping, tea you could stand a spoon in. Then upstairs breakfast carried up. Then beds, then slops, then dusting, then the brass. I want to stay on the brass a moment. The front door of this house carries a letter plate, a bell pull, a knob, and a knocker in the shape of a lion's head, and every one of them is polished every day. It is pointless now. You know it's pointless. Half the callers are creditors, and the other half are curiosity seekers slowing their carriages to look at the house the papers are whispering about. But every morning you stand on the front steps in the cold with your rags and your paste, and you rub that lion's head until it burns gold, until your own face bends across it, and the paste smell, sharp, sour, ammonia and rotten stone, is so worked into your fingers that you smell it in your dreams. And one morning in October, while you're polishing, a woman stops on the sidewalk to watch you, fur collar, small hard eyes, the kind of woman who has maids of her own. She looks at the lion, at the shuttered windows above, and she says, not to you exactly, to the street, using you as the street's ear. Polishing the door of a house that can't pay its coal bill. I don't know whether that's loyalty or foolishness. You keep polishing. You're not permitted to answer back to a lady on the street. That rule holds even now, even here. But your hand slows on the brass, and something rises through you from the soles of your boots, and you hear yourself say, in a voice you hardly recognize because it is so calm, "It's neither, ma'am. It's my work." She stares at you, and then she walks on, because there is nothing to say to that. Because you have not been insolent. You have simply told her the one thing her kind has never once had to understand. The lion shines. You gather your rags. Inside, through the door, you can hear the telephone ringing. Yes, there is a telephone. There has been a telephone since 1889. A wooden box in the butler's pantry that Mr. Greaves answers with the suspicion of a man interrogating a burglar. And it rings, and nobody is answering it, because everyone in the house already knows that no one calls with good news anymore. Winter comes early and means it. The winter of 1893 into 94 is a knife. In the parks and along the East River there are men sleeping out who had bank accounts in April. The city's charities are swamped. The police stations open their basement floors and men sleep on the stone in rows. In the mornings, going to the fishmonger for Mrs. Halloran. You do errands now, you do everything now. The walls between jobs long since fallen. You pass a line of men outside a Bowery mission that runs 300 deep in the dark before the doors open. Men standing so still in the cold they look planted, and every 10th face is a face that could be your father's. And you walk past them, back to a limestone chateau, to shine a lion for people who owe you $54. That's not a hardship story I'm telling you. Notice it. That's the strangeness of a servant's place in a panic. You are inside the falling house, but not of it. Its fall is not your fall. You own nothing in it. Not the bed you sleep in, not the candlestick you carry, and yet its fall will throw you further than it throws them. The family will lose the house and remain a family that had a house. You will lose a job, a bed, a table of faces, and a lion, and be a girl on a step with a tin trunk. Ruin, you are learning, is not one thing. Ruin obeys rank like everything else in this world. It even falls politely on the people at the top. Christmas is small and brave. Madam gives the staff their boxes as always. She must have sold something to do it. You don't ask, you don't want to know what, and yours holds $2 and a length of good grey wool for a dress, and her card, and on the card in her small slanted hand, to Delia, with thanks for her faithfulness. You look at that card a long time by candlelight. Faithfulness. It is a word for dogs, and it is also, when it is 2 months' work unpaid, and a lion polished daily for no one, maybe the only word there is. You put the card in your tin trunk, under the shawl, next to your mother's letters, and you can't have said why. Annie marries her grocery man the Thursday after Christmas, and leaves in a hired hack with her box on the seat beside her, crying and laughing out the window at once, and the staff stands at the area railing waving like a family seeing off an emigrant, which is what it is. Now the fires are yours and Kate's alone, and in February on a Tuesday, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, with sleet coming down like tacks, the master calls Mr. Greaves to the library, and Mr. Greaves is in there 1/4 of an hour, and when he comes down the back stairs into the kitchen, his face tells the whole hall before his mouth does. The house is sold. The bank has it. The family removes at the end of April, and on the last 3 days of April before the removal there will be a sale of the contents, a public auction in the house. The doors of the shut rooms will be opened, the sheets pulled off, the chandeliers unbagged, and the public, the paying, gawking, fingering public, will walk through every room of this house with catalogues in their hands and buy it, buy all of it. Buy the mahogany and the Sèvres that didn't get hidden, and the linen you have kept white for 3 years, lot by numbered lot. Mrs. Halloran sits down slowly on her stool by the range. Well, she says, to the iron, to the fire, to nobody. There it is then. And the range crackles, and the crooked clock ticks, and upstairs very faintly through 4 floors of a dying house you can hear the telephone ringing again. Let me hold you in that winter a little longer. The winter of 93 into 94, because it deserves it. It was one of the cruelest winters in the city's memory, and not because of the cold, though the cold was real. The Hudson carrying ice, the horse troughs frozen, the L platforms like exposed ridges where the wind found every seam in your coat. It was cruel because of what the cold landed on. The panic had been abstract in May, a matter of newsboys and run-in hats. By December it was bodies. Charity men counted the city's unemployed that winter at somewhere near 100,000, and nobody thought they'd found them all. The lodging rooms overflowed. Churches opened their basements. On the east side, a newspaper set up a relief fund and printed every day lists of families. No names, just facts, like tide tables of drowning. Widow, 5 children, no fire, no food since Tuesday. In the saloons, a nickel beer still bought the free lunch, and men made 1 beer last 3 hours over the pickles and bread, and the barmen, who of their own code mostly let them. You see it on your errands. That is the strange privilege of your position. You move daily between the 2 cities. In the morning you're in the basement of a limestone chateau handling silver. By 10 you're on 3rd Avenue with a market basket, walking past a pawnbroker's window that fills week by week like a tide coming in. You learn to read a depression in a pawnshop window. First it's luxuries, banjos, opera glasses, dress swords. Then it's tools, and tools are serious. A man's planes and chisels, a woman's sewing machine, the things people eat with, the things people earn with. When the tools go in the window, the neighbourhood is eating its seed corn. By February there are wedding rings on trays, dozens, like little dead fish, and you stop looking in that window. One morning outside the fishmonger's a man steps into your path. Decent coat gone shiny at the seams, collar clean. That's the detail that undoes you, the clean collar. Somebody's wife still boiling collars for a man with no work to wear them to. And he doesn't beg exactly. He says, "Miss, I'm a plasterer by trade." As if the sentence itself were the request, which it is. I am a person with a trade. Witness me. You have 11 cents over the fish money. You give him 10. Mrs. Halloran would have given him the fish. And here is the thing you carry home through the cold, the thing you can't put down. 18 months ago that man had work and rooms and Sunday clothes, and his version of the deal was the same as yours. Do the work, stay respectable, and the world will hold. The world did not hold. The world, it turns out, was never holding anyone. It was just weather, like the master's money. And every servant in every doomed great house in New York is having your exact thought that winter, in the same words or other ones, the difference between me and that man in the clean collar is 1 auction and a bit of luck. Thanksgiving below stairs is the last real feast of the old life, though you don't know it then. The family dines out, a relation's house, one of the solvent branches. Even ruin has cousins, and so the kitchen cooks for itself, and Mrs. Halloran, with the fierce providence of cooks everywhere, produces from her robbed and rationed larder a goose. Nobody asks where the goose came from. There are questions you don't ask a cook, the way there are questions you don't ask a general. There is stuffing with sage and mashed turnip with real butter, and a pudding with actual brandy set alight, while Mag claps like a child at a fair, and afterward Feeney is persuaded, he requires 40 seconds of persuading, to sing, and he sings the Rosa Trellie in a cracked sweet tenor with his eyes shut, one scarred hand flat on the table, and the crooked clock ticks, and the range breathes, and 8 people who are owed $100 and some apiece by a bankrupt sit in a warm room under a cold house and are for one evening entirely defiantly rich. Mr. Greaves says grace before that meal. He is not, you have gathered over 4 years, a believing man in any way he'd admit to, but he bows his head and says, "For what we are about to receive, and for this table, and for the work of the hands that made it," and there he stops, and doesn't finish the formula, just lets it stand, "for the work of the hands that made it," and everyone says, "Men" to that, because that is the whole of the servant's creed anyway, and the rest is commentary. In January, Madam begins to sell her jewels. You know, because you're the one who fetches the little parcels down to the man who calls. A discreet man, grey gloves, from a firm on Union Square that has served this function for good families since before the war, because there is an entire hidden industry in this city for dismantling fortunes quietly, as there is for building them loudly. The parcels are small and weigh nothing, and you carry them down the marble stairs like relics, and you know what's in them because you have cleaned them, dressed her hair combs, laid the velvet cases out on nights at the opera, the pearl collar, the diamond riviere that made 300 little rainbows on the bedroom ceiling one morning when the sun caught it, 4 years ago, your first winter, when you stood stunned in the doorway with your coal scuttle, and Madam laughed, actually laughed, at your face, and turned the necklace in the light to make the rainbows dance for the new girl for a full half-minute. That necklace goes down the stairs in your 2 hands on a Tuesday in January, in a chamois bag, to a man in grey gloves, and buys the household perhaps 3 more months. You give the parcel over in the hall. The man signs a receipt in a little book, and as he tucks the bag away, Madam, who has come down herself, who could not send this one by hands other than partly her own, stands very straight by the newel post in the winter light, and she says to the man, in a voice like still water, "Tell Mr. Ferris he need not hurry over the valuation. We are not in immediate difficulty. We are not in immediate difficulty." The lie is so enormous, so brave, so perfectly useless. The man's whole trade is knowing exactly how immediate everyone's difficulty is, that it circles all the way round to a kind of magnificence. He bows. He says, "Of course, Madam." Everyone in the hall is lying, and everyone knows it, and the manners hold, because the manners are the last wall standing, and all 3 of you tend it together for a moment like masons. Then the door closes, and Madam stands there a moment longer, one hand on the newel post, and you make yourself a piece of furniture against the wall, invisible, eyes down. Delia, "Ma'am." A pause long enough to lay a fire in. "When you clean my room tomorrow, you may move the velvet cases down to the box room. There is no further need for them to take up space on my dressing table. Yes, ma'am. And she goes up the marble stairs at her ordinary pace, her back a plumb line, and you stand in the cold hall and understand that you have just watched a form of courage that will never get into any book, because the books belong to the winners, and this, the empty cases carried quietly to the box room, the back kept straight on the stairs. This is what losing looks like when it's done perfectly. And I owe you one more piece of the winter before we go to the sale. The day the collapse stopped being weather and became men in the hall. It is the first week of March, a Wednesday, and they arrive at 9:30 in the morning. 3 of them from the receivers, which is the word the law uses for the men who take possession of a drowned fortune and inventory the water. 2 clerks and a principal. The principal is young, younger than the master by 20 years, in a good plain coat, and he has the manner you will spend the rest of your life recognizing in a certain kind of man. Perfectly courteous, perfectly unhurried, and perfectly without doubt, the manner of a man who has already won and is merely attending the formalities. The clerks carry ledgers and a japanned deed box. They are in the library 4 hours. You bring coffee twice. Both times the room arranges itself the same way. The young man at the master's own desk, at his desk in his chair, having been offered neither, with papers squared in front of him, the clerks at the long table, and the master standing at the window with his back to all of it, looking down at the avenue. The second time you come in, the young man is saying, in a voice you'd use to read a timetable, "The equity in the house was exhausted, as you know, in September. What remains to discuss is the schedule of contents and the date." And the master says to the window, "My wife's things." And the young man says, "Her personal effects, naturally. Jewellery, plate and works of art are scheduled." And there is a silence with your coffee tray in the middle of it, and you set down the cups without one click of china. 4 years of training holding your hand steady while the room holds its breath, and you leave, and the door shuts behind you on the rest of a man's life being read out to him at his own desk. That night the master does not go up to bed at all. You know, because it is you who finds the library still lit at 6 the next morning when you come to do the grate. Lamps burning, fire dead, cold as a vault, and the master asleep in the chair by the window in his evening clothes, and across the room, in the other chair, straight-backed, awake, in his black coat, Mr. Greaves, who has plainly been there all night. 2 men past 50 in a cold room, one broken and sleeping, one keeping watch. Mr. Greaves rises when you come in, silent on the carpet, and takes the coal scuttle out of your hand himself, and jerks his chin at the door. Go, and you never speak of it, and neither does he, and it is only years later retelling it that you understand what you saw, because you finally hear the shape of it. The richest man you ever served spent the last night of his fortune with no company in the world except his butler, and the butler stayed. Not for wages which did not exist, not for love exactly, for the same reason you polish the lion, because the work doesn't know the money's gone, because somebody must sit up with the house. Later that week the papers finish the story their own way. There is a morning when the financial page prints the master's name in the lists, assignments and receiverships, agate type, alphabetical, 1 line in a column of lines wedged between a hat manufacturer and a Brooklyn brewery. And Mrs. Halloran, who has taken over the reading of the paper aloud at breakfast since Mr. Greaves stopped being able to, reads the whole column straight through, every name, every line, in a flat County Meath voice, like a priest reading the dead, and when she finishes nobody says anything, and Feeney takes the paper and checks the racing results, because life is life. And you learn the last lesson of the panic that morning, watching 6 servants eat bread and dripping under the name of their ruined master. The ruin of the great makes agate type. The ruin of the small makes no type at all. Somewhere in the city that same morning, some plasterer with a clean collar went under without a syllable printed anywhere, and the column of names you'll remember from 1894 stands in your mind ever after, for all the columns never set, the way one lit window stands for a wall of dark ones. The next Sunday you write your mother the letter you've been not writing for a year and a half. You've kept the trouble out of your letters the whole time. Every emigrant does. The money orders must arrive wrapped in good news. That is the etiquette of exile. But now the house is in the American papers, and the American papers reach Galway eventually, folded around parcels passed hand to hand, and she must hear it from you first. You sit on your bed with the writing case on your knees, and Kate pretends to sleep to give you privacy, which is the only way privacy exists in an attic, and you chew the pen holder and finally write it plain, the way she raised you. Dear mother, the family here has lost its money and the house is to be sold in April. I am well. I am paid what was owing. I have my characters and $51 saved, and a place will be found, so you are not to worry and the money will not stop. And then you sit looking at that last sentence. The money will not stop. And you understand that you have just signed it, the way your father signed his labour to a landlord, the way Madam signed her pearls to the man in grey gloves. A promise made to keep someone else's floor from shaking. Cost to be reckoned privately. Later, alone. You seal it. 4th Sunday, Mott Street. You'll buy the money order there. $4. The money will not stop. And in 31 years, you don't know this yet, lying back on the iron bed while Kate's breathing goes real? In 31 years of Kate's and Delia's keeping that same sentence, more money will cross the Atlantic from the servant girls of America to the cottages of Ireland than most of the gentlemen in that agate column ever held at once. No monument gets built to it. It is the largest quiet act of any age, and it is done in $4 pieces by hands that smell of brass paste, and history will file it, when it files it at all, under remittances, under comprising. You blow out the candle. Downstairs the pipes knock. Spring is 3 weeks off, and the sale is 5, and the fires still want laying in the morning. Now comes the strangest work of your life, preparing a house for its own funeral. The auction men arrive in March. Not the appraisers this time, the workers, in aprons, with straw and excelsior and rolls of green baize, and a foreman named Kessler with a pencil behind his ear and a voice like a market. They are not unkind. That surprises you. You expected vultures and got tradesmen. Men who handle a Meissen figure the way a midwife handles a newborn, because a chip is money, and who whistle at good pieces the way other men whistle at horses. Look at the flame on that veneer, Kessler says. Running a flat palm over the dining table you've waxed 150 times. And then he looks up and sees your face and understands everything in 1 second. Auction men always understand. They live inside other people's disasters the way undertakers live inside grief. And he says quietly, "You kept this finish." And you nod, and he nods back once, and writes in his book. And that single nod from a stranger in a canvas apron is the only professional compliment anyone has ever paid you. You open the shut rooms with Kate one by one and pull the sheets, and the furniture comes back out of its year of dark like something surfacing. The ballroom shutters are unbarred, and the light comes in sideways over a parquet floor gone grey with dust, and you and Kate spend 2 entire days on your knees in that ballroom with beeswax and turpentine, bringing back a floor for strangers to walk on with their boots while they bid on the chandelier above it. You do it perfectly. You cannot explain, even to Kate, even to yourself, why it must be perfect. Something in you has decided that this house will not be seen dirty. They can take everything. They cannot say it was let go. The catalogue arrives from the printers in April. A fat grey pamphlet, 1,140 lots. Mr. Greaves keeps a copy in the pantry, and you read it at night, and it is the most terrible book you've ever read, because you know every sentence of it with your hands. Lot 214, a set of 18 dining chairs, mahogany, in crimson silk damask. You have crawled beneath those chairs to brush that damask. Lot 388, a pair of Famel Rose vases mounted as lamps. You have carried those down 4 flights, one at a time, your heart in your mouth. Lot 640, household linen, fine quality, comprising 200 pairs of sheets. Comprising, the book says, as if a word like comprising could hold what 200 pairs of sheets means in laundry, in mangles, in frozen fingers hanging them in the drying room, in 3 years of Mondays. The newspapers print the sale dates, and Fifth Avenue, polite, discreet, murderous Fifth Avenue, buys its tickets, because that's what an auction like this is in April of 1894, in a city gutted by panic. It is theatre. It is the public execution this age performs instead of hangings. The crowd doesn't come to buy. Most of them couldn't, and the rest won't. They come to walk through the fallen house, to finger the curtains of people who once didn't invite them to dinner, to see up close with their own eyes that it can happen, that the great can fall, because nothing on this earth comforts frightened money like the sight of other money dead. The family leaves before it begins. Of course they do. The condemned don't attend. They go on a Thursday morning quietly, to a hotel first, and then, everyone says, to Europe, where a broken American fortune can still live like minor royalty on the exchange rate. Madam comes down to the hall in her travelling coat while the hack waits, and the staff, all 6 of you now, stands in a line by the door, and she goes along the line like a general reviewing troops after a lost battle, a word for each. What she says to you, you will keep. It wasn't much. It was, "The house was always beautiful, Delia. I did notice. 4 years of invisibility, and at the very last minute, on the doorstep of the wreck, I did notice." Then the door closes behind them, and Mr. Greaves bolts it out of habit, and then looks at the bolt as if it has said something absurd and unbolts it again. Nothing left to keep in, nothing left to keep out. The master shakes no hands. He goes down the steps, looking straight ahead, past the lion, gets into the hack, and does not look back at the house. You watch from the morning room window, and you understand it, almost. Some things you can only survive by not looking at them. The first sale day is the 24th of April, and it needs a chapter of its own in your memory. So here it is, and I'll take it slowly, because you were there, and I want you there. 7 in the morning, the auction men take the doors. The house is theirs now, legally actually. The staff has been kept on 3 final weeks, paid at last in full by the bank, which pays its debts, because banks always pay the small debts of the ruined. It is cheap and looks like mercy, to clean, guard and show. You wear your best apron. You have been assigned by Kessler to stand in the dining room and watch hands. People steal, he says flatly. Little things, spoons, snuff boxes, ladies mostly, watch hands, not faces. 9 o'clock. The doors open and Fifth Avenue comes in. You've never seen the house full. That's the first shock. In 4 years there were dinners, music halls, twice a ball, but always measured, always chosen, 60 people in rooms built for 600. Now they pour in off the street with catalogues in their fists, and by 10 o'clock there are people on the stairs, people in the bedrooms, people 3 deep around the dining table, and the sound, that's the second shock. The sound of this silent house gone loud. Hundreds of feet with no carpets left down. Hundreds of voices with no reason to whisper, a sound like water taking a ship. And the hands. You watch the hands, as ordered, and you will see those hands in your dreams for years. Gloved hands flipping the Sèvres over to check marks. Hands testing the bed where Madame cried. A man's thumbnail digging into the dining table, into your finish, your 150 weeks, to see if the wood is solid. A woman opening drawers in the master's own dresser, casually, the way you'd open drawers in a shop, and her friend laughing at something found there. You stand against the wall with your hands folded, invisible, and the crowd flows past you, and twice, a stranger hands you their empty punch cup without ever seeing that you are a person, because the auction house has laid on refreshments. Because of course it has. A funeral needs its meats. At noon the auctioneer mounts his little pulpit in the picture gallery, raps once, and begins to sell the house's life at the rate of 80 lots an hour. You can hear it from the dining room. You can hear it from everywhere. The man's voice is a brass instrument. Lot number 1, a pair of bronze and ormolu candelabra. And then the numbers, climbing, the strange sing-song gabble, the crack of the little hammer, and the next lot, and the next, hour after hour, and every crack of that hammer is something leaving. Somewhere in the middle of the afternoon he sells the sergeant, the portrait. Madam in her pearl grey satin, 29 years old and painted in Paris, and the bidding on her goes long and hard, and the hammer cracks at a figure that is more than every servant this house ever employed, earned in their whole lives altogether, and the gallery applauds. They applaud. You're holding somebody's empty punch cup. You look down and find your knuckles white around it. Kate finds you at 6 when the doors close on day 1. She's been on the bedroom floors all day watching hands. Her eyes are red-rimmed and dry, cried out hours ago and kept working the way you both were raised. She doesn't say anything. She takes the punch cup out of your hand because you're still holding it and sets it on a windowsill, and the two of you stand in the wrecked dining room. Chairs already tagged and stacked, table sold, sideboard sold, the room's whole meaning sold. And outside the tall windows, Fifth Avenue rolls by golden in the evening light, carriages going home to dinners in houses that are still alive. 3 more days of this, Kate says. 2, you say, then the vans. She nods. And then she says the only thing anyone said all that day that you will still be quoting when you're old is like they came to eat it, the house, like ants on a wasp. I skipped too quickly past the exhibition days, and I shouldn't, because the exhibition, the 2 days before the selling, when the house stands open for viewing, is where you learn the most about people, and it deserves its hour. An auction of this size is advertised like a play. The notices run in all the papers for a week. By order of the mortgagee, the entire costly contents, without reserve. Without reserve is the phrase that brings them the connoisseur and the ghoul alike. It means everything must sell, at whatever price the room will pay, and a whole city ruined and hungry for bargains. Reads those two words the way gulls read a listing ship. On exhibition days, admission is by catalogue, 50 cents, and that 50 cents is meant to keep out the mere gapers, and it fails completely because in 1894 there are thousands of people in New York with 50 cents, and a dead afternoon, and a hunger to see the inside of a Fifth Avenue house, any Fifth Avenue house, and this may be the only chance their whole lives will offer. They come on the horse cars. They come in from Brooklyn, shop girls in 2s and 3s on their half day, walk in the ballroom with their arms linked, absolutely silent, their eyes taking everything the way dry ground takes rain. An old German cabinet maker who stands before the great sideboard for 20 minutes, just looking, then puts on his spectacles and looks closer, at the joinery, at the carving, and finally touches one dovetail with one finger, the way you touch a sleeping baby, and says to no one, "Ah, beautiful," and puts his spectacles away and leaves without seeing another lot. He came to visit a colleague's work. 50 cents. And then the others, the dealers, professionally rumpled, marking their catalogues in code, talking prices sideways out of their mouths. The agents of other rich houses sent to bid on specific lots, and pretending to be nobody, which fools no one, because their boots cost $40. The society women who knew Madam, who dined at that table, some of them, you carried their furs, walking the rooms in pairs with their catalogues held like fans, and the things they say to each other in front of the servants, in front of you, because you are furniture. Well, she always did buy French and pay double. 12 years. They lasted longer than I would have said. My dear, look, the monogrammed linen. Imagine buying somebody's monogram. And people do buy the monograms. That's a thing you learn. Monogram linen from a great house sells perfectly well at a discount to boarding houses and to people who will explain the initials away or unpick them by lamplight. Nothing is unsaleable. Grief is a discount, that's all. Somewhere in this city tonight, I promise you, someone is sleeping in sheets that still carry the initials of a family that went down in 1893 and has never once wondered whose hands kept them white. You are stationed. You watch. And on the second exhibition day there occurs the thing you will tell for the rest of your life. A woman comes into the dining room alone, mid-afternoon lull. Black coat, black gloves gone grey at the fingertips from where? 40 maybe, with the kind of face that has done its crying at home in advance. She isn't a dealer, and isn't society, and isn't a shop girl on a lark. She walks straight to the long wall where the smaller pictures hang, tagged and numbered, and stops in front of lot 507. A little oil, a coast scene, waves on rocks, one of the pictures nobody upstairs ever looked at, hung in the dark end of the room, and she stands there. 10 minutes. 15. You're supposed to watch hands. Her hands stay folded. It's her face you can't stop watching. And finally, against every rule you own, you move down the wall, straightening straight frames, and nearer you say quietly, "It's a fine picture, ma'am." She doesn't startle. She says, "My father painted it." And then, in a level voice, eyes on the waves, "He sold it in 79, the year I was born, for $60, to a dealer, and the dealer sold it to them. He's 4 years dead. I saw the name in the catalogue notice in the paper." She turns and looks at you, dry-eyed, terrible. "I came to see where it lived. It lived well, didn't it? Better than he did. Tomorrow it will be knocked down for $22 to a man who furnishes hotels. She won't be there. You'll look for her. But that afternoon she stands in front of her father's waves another 5 minutes, and then she nods to the picture. To it, not to you, and walks out of the house, and you stand in the empty dining room among 1140 numbered lots, and think about how many hands are in every object in the world, layered under the shine, and how the catalogue lists none of them, not the cabinet makers, not the painters, not yours. Provenance, the dealers call the history of a thing. The provenance of everything is hands, and the hands never make the book. The selling days bring the crowd I told you about, but I left out the sounds, and the auction is above all a thing you hear. The auctioneer, a famous man in his trade, works from a rostrum with a ledge for his water glass, and his chant is a machine that never quite repeats. The lot read out, the invitation, the first bid coaxed. Shall we say 200? 100 then. Someone start me, thank you, sir. And then the climb. And the climb has a grammar, short words, rising thirds. Do I hear? And 50. Against you, sir. The room's temperature audible in it. And underneath the chant the continuous rustle of 500 catalogues, and the porter's feet, and the thud and squeak of each lot hoisted to the display table. And then the crack. The hammer is ivory, no bigger than a darning egg. The crack it makes is small. It is the smallest sound you have ever heard in something. Between lots, in the 2-second gaps, you can hear Fifth Avenue through the windows, carriages and sparrows, the world going on. Crack. Lot 641. Crack. Lot 642. 80 an hour, hour after hour. By the last afternoon your body has stopped hearing it. The way mill workers stop hearing looms, and then comes lot 1102, the range, Mrs. Halloran's black iron husband of 12 years, bought for $41 by a restaurant man from 6th Avenue. And the crack of that particular hammer gets through everything, all the way down to the kitchen where she is sitting with her tea, and she puts her cup down and looks at the range and says, "Well, old fellow, sold twice in one lifetime, the pair of us." And she gets up and rakes his fire and cooks supper on him one last time, and the supper is excellent, because a professional is a professional in the presence of death. Which is the entire moral of everyone in this story, if it has one. There are 3 weeks between the family's departure and the sale, and I want you to have those weeks too, because they were the strangest of the 4 years. The interregnum, Mr. Greaves called it once dryly, and then had to tell Mag what it meant, and Mag said, "So it's minding an empty coffin." And Mr. Greaves considered this and said, "Yes, precisely. Thank you, Mag." And Mag glowed for a day. 6 servants alone in 40 rooms. The bank pays your board and or back wages and asks only that the house be kept, guarded and shown. And so for 3 weeks you live inside a paradox. The hardest driven household in New York with almost nothing to do. No bells. That's the first thing. The thing your body cannot get over. The bellboard hangs on the kitchen wall with its 22 little discs, and it never moves. And for the first week every one of you keeps glancing at it, the way you'd glance at a stopped heart. You catch Kate actually dusting the bellboard one morning tenderly, like tending a grave, and neither of you says anything about it. No bells, but habits hold. You'll wake at 5:30 because your bones ring whether or not anything else does. Fires get lit that warm nobody. Mrs. Halloran cooks 3 meals a day for 6 with the concentration of a woman cooking for 60, because the alternative is thinking. And in the afternoons, this is the part you'll never tell anyone who wasn't there, the house becomes briefly yours. You take your mending to the morning room because the light is good and the light was always good, and for 3 years you knew it the way a fish knows the view from the fisherman's chair. Feeney smokes his pipe in the walled back court like a squire. Mag plays the ballroom. That's the only word for it. The piano is tagged Lot 960 and locked, but the floor you and Kate wax to glass is there, and Mag takes off her boots and runs and slides the length of it in her stockinged feet, arms out, again and again, shrieking softly. 17 years old and lowest at the table, skating alone down the middle of a Fifth Avenue ballroom in the 4 o'clock light. You and Kate stand in the doorway watching, and then, you're the one who moves first. You'll always be glad it was you. You sit down on the floor and unlace your boots. 3 housemaids sliding down a ballroom under a bagged chandelier in a house sold to a bank. If the Panic of 1893 produced a better hour anywhere in New York, I never found it in any record. At night, these 6 of you keep to the kitchen and the servants' hall, 1 lamp close together, the way people gather in the lit part of a big dark. And the talk of these 3 weeks is the talk that matters, the taking stock talk, and it is where you learn everyone's plans and everyone learns yours, and where Mr. Greaves does the last great service of his tenure, the characters. He writes them at the pantry table over 4 evenings, in his upright copper plate, 1 for each of you, and he takes testimony first, actually interviews each of you in the pantry, door open for propriety, asking your dates, your duties, what you want next. And the interview is 5 minutes of questions, and then, in every single case, a long silence while he looks at you over his spectacles and decides what is true. Then he writes it. He shows you nothing. He seals them. But Madam's letter for you was 2 pages, and Mr. Greaves's, you will discover at the agency, is 1 paragraph, and the agencies of New York know his hand, and the paragraph ends. I have kept house for 40 years, and I commend her without reservation, which, from him, causes the agency woman to look up over the letter at you and actually see you, the way people look at a plain envelope that turns out to hold $100. The last Sunday, all 6 of you go to Mass together. Even Mr. Greaves, who is some flavour of Protestant or nothing at all, walks with you as far as the cathedral steps and waits in the spring sun, hat off, until you all come out. And walking back up the avenue, the 6 of you abreast on the wide pavement, past the houses that are still alive, Mrs. Halloran says the thing that everyone has been not saying for 3 weeks. After Thursday, I'll not see the half of ye again. That's the truth of it, so someone had to say it. Now nobody has to say it again, and nobody does. But that evening she makes the goose again. Where does she get geese? The woman is a magician of poultry. And Feeney sings, and this time Kate sings too, a thing none of you knew she could do. A high, thin, lovely voice like something coming through a wall, and Mag recites a poem from school about a shipwreck, all 17 verses with gestures, and it is so bad it becomes magnificent, and Mr. Greaves laughs until he takes his spectacles off, which none of you has ever seen, and the crooked clock ticks its 5 stolen minutes, and that is the last night of the table. The auction I've shown you, the vans I've shown you, but there is 1 more hour to give you, the very last one, because you were the last of the staff out of the house, and it happened like this. Thursday evening, the 2nd day of the vans. The others left at noon. The handshakes on the sidewalk, Mrs. Halloran crushing you against her flower and lavender bulk. Kate's address in Boston pressed into your palm on a torn scrap. Mag crying at last. Finally, weeping like a burst pipe on Feeney's shoulder while he patted her and looked fiercely at a lamppost. But Kessler needed 2 people till end of day for the linen counts, and Mr. Greaves had the keys until 6, and so it came down to the 2 of you, butler and second housemaid, first and nearly last in the order of the table, standing in the marble hall at 10 to 6 with the door open on the blue evening. The hall is empty. You've never seen it empty. No console, no mirror, no palms, no carpet. Just the black and white stone, and the stairs going up into shadow, and your 2 figures small in it, and every sound multiplied. The van's gone quiet outside. A sparrow somewhere up the stairwell that got in through an open sash, and will have the whole house to itself tonight. Mr. Greaves looks around the hall once slowly, a full circle, the way you'd check a dinner table. Then he says, "Well, Delia," not miss, not girl, Delia, "is it clean?" And you look, really look, one last professional pass, the housemaid's eye running the ledges, the stair rail, the floor, and it is. Stripped, soled, finished and clean. Clean as a Sunday. Whatever else is written about this family and whatever books get written, the last fact of their house is that it was handed over immaculate, and that fact is yours and Kate's and Annie's and Mag's on your knees with soda and stone and blacklead and beeswax 4 years, and no one will ever know it, and both of you standing in that hall know it completely. "Yes, Mr. Greaves," you say, "it's clean." "Then we're done here," he says, and holds the great door for you, the front door, held open by the butler for the second housemaid. And you walk out the front of the house for the first time in your life, past the lion, down the white steps, and he pulls the door shut behind you, and the lock takes the key with a sound like a full stop, and the 2 of you stand on the pavement of Fifth Avenue in the ordinary miraculous evening traffic, unemployed, at liberty, alive. "May I walk you to your car, Delia?" "You may, Mr. Greaves." And he does, to the 6th Avenue L through the spring dusk, and shakes your hand at the stair like a colleague, because that is what you are, and that is the end of the house. The second day sells the library. 3,000 volumes, many uncut, the auctioneer notes, and the crowd titters, because uncut means unread, means the books were furniture, and the dead can't defend themselves. The third day sells the small things, and the small things are the worst. The big pieces going felt like a battle. The small things feel like pockets being picked. Madam's travelling clock, the master's chess set, a child's rocking horse from the top-floor nursery, dapple grey, mane half loved off. The son is 26 now and in Paris, but there was a boy in this house once, and his horse goes for $4 to a dealer who buys it without looking up from his catalogue. Mrs. Halloran refuses to attend any of it. She holds the basement like a garrison, cooking the staff's meals on a range that is itself lot 1,102. Feeding the auction men too, because they're working men, and working men get fed in her kitchen. She doesn't care whose name is on the writ. On the last evening, Kessler comes down and eats her mutton stew standing up, and looks around the kitchen, the copper pans tagged, the scrubbed table tagged, 40 years of iron and steam tagged, and says, "Best kept house I've cleared in 15 years. I've cleared 40. You'd not believe the styes I've seen behind marble fronts." And Mrs. Halloran folds her scarred arms and says, "I'd believe anything about the rich except that they know what a clean kitchen costs." And Kessler laughs so hard he has to put his bowl down. That night, the last night, was the van's coming in the morning. The staff does something no one plans and no one suggests. It simply happens. After supper, Mr. Greaves takes a candle lamp and the 6 of you walk the house together, all of it, every floor, every room, ballroom to nursery in the dark by one lamp, past the tagged and numbered wreckage, and nobody says a word the whole way. And it is exactly like walking behind a coffin, and it is also, you couldn't say this out loud, but you feel it in your feet, the first time in 4 years you have walked through the front hall like a person instead of a function, slowly, looking, aloud. At the top of the house there is a door to the roof. Feeney knows it. Coachmen know every door. And so the last thing you all do in this house is stand together on its slate roof, 6 servants between the iron cresting, in the cold April midnight, with New York laid out around you. You have never seen it. 4 years, and you've never once seen the view this house was built to command. The Parker Black Lake to the north, the 2 rivers catching the moon, the mansions marching down the avenue with their windows lit, and below them, east and south, the endless brown miles of everyone else, the tenements, the docks, the neighbourhoods where the bread lines form at 4 in the morning, 100,000 chimneys smoking under the stars. Somewhere down there is the boarding house where Annie lives married. Somewhere down there is the agency where, on Monday, you will stand in line with your character in an envelope. Somewhere out past the Black Harbour is an ocean, and across it a stone cottage in Galway where they are all asleep, and where $4 a month means shoes. Mrs. Halloran is puffing from the stairs. Kate has her rosary out. Feeney lights his pipe with his back to the wind, an outdoor man's economy of motion, and Mr. Greaves stands at the parapet looking down at the avenue for a long time, and then he says, to all of you and none of you, 40 years I've kept other men's houses, and I'll tell you what I know that they don't. The pipe smoke tears away in the wind. They think the house is theirs because their name is on the deed, but a house belongs to whoever keeps it alive, whoever lights it and feeds it and washes it and sits up with it at night. We were never in service to them, children. We were in service to the house. And the house... He stops, and you hear 40 years pass through one breath. The house knew. Nobody answers. There is nothing to answer. Below you, one by one, the lamps of Fifth Avenue burn on, and the wind comes over the roof smelling of coal and river and spring, and you stand there, Bridget Cordelia Farrell, 19 years old, on top of the ruin you kept perfect, and you think, I saw it through. It is worth nothing at the bank. It is not nothing. In the morning, the vans come, and the house empties in a day and a half. It took 12 years to fill and 36 hours to pour out. And on the last afternoon Kessler pays off the guards, and Mr. Greaves walks the empty rooms once with the bank's young man, handing over keys from a ring he has carried so long that the ring has worn a pale stripe on his palm. And then, in the street, in daylight, before the eyes of anybody who cares to watch, the staff of the house shakes hands on the sidewalk like a crew paid off from a voyage and scatters. Here is what happened to them, because you'll want to know, and because history mostly never tells you, and I hunted it the way you hunt anything below stairs, through registry offices and censuses and the small print of other people's lives. Mrs. Halloran went to a hotel kitchen on Madison Square, hated it loudly for 11 years, trained a generation of frightened Irish girls to fear and love her, and died at her range, or near enough of a tired heart, with $300 in the post office savings bank and a funeral so crowded with cooks that the caterers came to it as mourners. Feeney held out with horses until the horses lost. In 1908 he was driving a motor taxicab and despising it, and he despised it very capably for another decade, and taught his grandsons to drive, and to his last day called the steering wheel the reins, and dared anyone to laugh. Mag, little Mag, lowest at the table, did the thing none of you did. She left service entirely, shirtwaist factory, then a sewing machine of her own, then, by 1910, a tiny shop with her sister, alterations and dressmaking, her own name painted on the glass, her own name, on glass, lowest at the table. Kate stayed in service all her life, a lady's maid in the end, in a quiet, safe banking house of exactly the kind poor Thomas the footman fled to, and she sent money to Limerick every month without one failure for 31 years, and if there are ledgers kept anywhere that matter, that line of entries is worth more than anything sold in that April auction. Mr. Greaves was hired within a month. A butler who buried a great house honourably is, to those who understand such things, a butler beyond price, and kept his last house until 1901, and retired to a married niece in New Jersey, and there exists, in one family's album, a photograph of him old, in a garden, in his shirt sleeves. Shirt sleeves. It took him 60 years to be photographed as a man instead of a post. He's smiling in it, slightly. And Delia stood in line at the agency on Monday with her character in an envelope, and the character, written by Madam before she sailed, in that small slanted hand, was 2 pages when one paragraph was custom, and it ended with a sentence agencies had not often seen. She is the kind of servant on whom a house can be rebuilt, and a house was. But that is another story, and the fire is low, and you've been awake long enough. So come back down from the roof now, down the attic stairs, the 26 steps your feet know blind, into the little room under the slates, the iron bed, the strip of drugget, the window the size of a Bible. This is the last night in this bed, and you know it, and knowing it makes the bed softer, the way last things are always softest. You lie down without undressing fully, too tired to bother. The grey wool dress, Madam's Christmas cloth, became folded over the chair, your boots side by side where your feet can find them in the dark. Across the room, Kate's breathing has already gone slow and even, her rosary loose in her sleeping fist. Faith holding on even when the hand lets go. Your hands ache. They always ache at night. The good deep ache of work finished. The splits at your knuckles stinging faintly under their coat of mutton fat. You flex them once in the dark, these 40-year-old hands on a 19-year-old girl, and you think of everything they touched today, everything they touched these 4 years. The lion on the door, the flame of the mahogany, 200 pairs of sheets, a punch cup a stranger handed to a girl she never saw. They saw the shine. They never saw the hands. But you know. You will always know. Every beautiful thing in that catalogue was beautiful because someone's hands made it so, morning after morning, unseen, unpaid at the end, unthanked until the doorstep. And that knowledge is yours the way the $18 a month never quite was. Nobody can auction it. There is no lot number for it. It goes where you go. The house settles around you, one last time. You know every sound. The timbers easing, the pipes knocking their faint far heartbeat, the shutter straining on its hook. Empty now, sold now, and still it talks in its sleep. Still it breathes, because Mr. Greaves was right. Houses are alive exactly as long as someone is awake inside them caring. And tonight, this one last night, that someone is you. Tomorrow there will be the agency line. Tomorrow there will be a new house, new stairs for your feet to learn, a new bellboard, a new crooked clock. Tomorrow there will be fires to lay for people who will never learn your face. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only this: the bed, the dark, the slate roof close overhead, Kate breathing, the city murmuring far below like the sea in a shell. You are warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have your hands and your health and a character in an envelope that says a house can be rebuilt on you. That's more than most souls in this hard year can say. That's enough. The sounds of the city grow fainter, or maybe you're just listening less. The boundary between waking and sleeping starts to blur, the way it does when the body has done honest work and knows it, when consciousness has finished its shift and hands the house over to the night. Somewhere below, the empty rooms stand in the dark, holding the shapes of everything that was. Somewhere across town, Annie sleeps beside her grocery man. Somewhere downtown, the bread lines are already, quietly, in the black hours, beginning to form. Somewhere on the ocean, a ship carries a family toward a smaller life, and in a cabin, a woman who noticed at the very end lies awake listening to engines. And here, at the top of a sold house on the finest street in America, a girl from Galway sinks towards sleep with aching hands and a clean conscience, which is a better ending than most of the money on this avenue will get. Centuries will pass, well, a century and some. The house you know will come down. Almost all of them will, the whole chateau-crowned mile of them, felled for towers of glass, and people will walk past the corner where the lion hung on the door, and never know a door was there. The bells and the bellboards will go silent. The attic rooms will vanish. The word servant itself will grow strange in people's mouths. But people will still keep houses alive, still rise in the dark to warm the rooms of others, still do beautiful work that nobody sees, and know that it was beautiful anyway, and carry that knowing like a coin that never spends. Some things don't change. The hands don't change. The tiredness at the end of an honest day, that doesn't change. And the need, at the last, to set the boots side by side and lie down and let it all go, that doesn't change either. So let it come. Let sleep take you, the way it took Delia under the slates on the last night of the old house. Let the world fade. Let the hammer cracks and the bellboards quiet. Let your hands unclench, finger by finger. Let your thoughts slow and soften, and finally stop. You've earned this rest. Whatever your work was today, seen or unseen, you've earned it. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.